Monday, 2 p.m. I'll never forget that moment. 1 minute I was reviewing quarterly reports, the next I was sitting in a conference room watching my career explode. Brent walked in with that smug smile I'd grown to hate. 6 months ago, he was my junior. Now he was my boss, thanks to office politics I still didn't understand. Behind him trailed 2 other executives, their faces stone cold. Team meeting, Brent announced to our department. Everyone filed in, confused. These weren't scheduled. Then came the words that changed everything. The Hallgate account failure was catastrophic. Someone needs to take responsibility. His eyes locked on mine. Leighton, this lands squarely on your shoulders. I felt my stomach drop. The Hallgate account hadn't failed because of me. In fact, I'd warned against the strategy Brent pushed through. You're terminated. Effective immediately. The room fell silent. 20 people I'd worked with for 3 years just stared. Some looked shocked. Others avoided eye contact completely. I didn't cry. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. I stood up slowly, gathering my things. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. As I walked toward the door, something crinkled under my notebook. A sticky note. Someone had slipped it there without me noticing. Check your email. You deserve to know. I made it to my car before opening my phone. The anonymous email was already waiting, sent from a throwaway address I didn't recognize. The subject line made my blood run cold. What really happened, video attached. My finger hovered over the attachment. Part of me didn't want to know. But I pressed play anyway. The video was shaky, clearly filmed secretly. But the voices were crystal clear. Brent sat at a bar with 2 other executives from our company. They were laughing, drinks in hand. She had no clue. Brent's voice rang through my car speakers. I needed someone to take the fall for Hallgate, and Leighton was perfect. Too honest for her own good. One of the other men laughed. Think she'll figure it out? Doubt it. She actually believed her work mattered. I watched myself become their punchline. Every late night, every weekend I'd sacrificed, every idea I'd contributed, it all meant nothing to them. They'd planned this. The firing hurt. But this was worse. They'd made me into a joke. I was about to close the video when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey Leighton, I just saw your name removed from our portal. What's going on? Alex Hallgate, wait. Hallgate. The client. Alex Hallgate wasn't just any client. His company represented our biggest account, worth over $2 million annually. I'd spent 8 months building that relationship from scratch, back when Brent was still learning how to make coffee properly. I stared at the text for a full minute before responding. Hi Alex. I was let go today. Officially for account issues, but I think there's more to the story. His response came immediately. Account issues? Our relationship has never been stronger. We were actually planning to expand our contract next quarter. My heart started racing. If Hallgate was happy with my work, then Brent's story made no sense. Unless... Alex, would you be open to a quick call? I think there are some things you should know. Absolutely. Can we do tomorrow morning? I drove home in a daze, but something was building inside me. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was clarity. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my old business registration papers from college. Pierce and Company. Strategic Solutions, the LLC I'd started but never used because I'd been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder. Maybe it was time to stop climbing someone else's ladder and build my own. For the first time since 2 p.m., I smiled. Tuesday morning came fast. I'd barely slept, but I felt more awake than I had in months. The Zoom call with Alex Holgate started exactly at 9 a.m. I'd prepared carefully, keeping my tone professional but honest. Alex, I need to tell you what really happened yesterday. I was fired for supposedly mishandling your account, but I have reason to believe that's not the truth. I told him about the video, about Brent's comments. I didn't embellish or add drama. The facts spoke for themselves. Alex listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Leighton, I've been in business for 20 years. I know when someone's trying to manipulate me, and I know when someone genuinely cares about results. You've always been straight with me. He paused, then continued. Here's what I'm thinking. What if we work together directly? I've been considering switching to a smaller, more focused firm anyway. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? I mean, are you available for independent consulting? Because I'd rather work with you than anyone at your old company. Before I could respond, he added something that made my day. Actually, I have a contact at Stratcor. You know them, right? Brent's biggest competitor. They've been trying to win our business for months. Maybe I should introduce you. An hour later, I had a meeting scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. Subject line, discuss exclusive collaboration opportunity. I spent Tuesday night doing something that felt both terrifying and empowering. I started gathering evidence. My laptop still had access to old project files and email chains. Technically, I wasn't supposed to have them after being fired, but nobody had thought to revoke my access yet. What I found made my stomach turn. Brent had been manipulating data for months. KPI reports that didn't match the raw numbers. Client feedback that had been edited to look worse than it actually was. Meeting notes where he'd attributed other people's ideas to himself. But the worst part? I found emails where he'd actively sabotaged projects, then blamed the failures on team members who had no idea what was happening. I wasn't his first victim. I was just the latest. I backed everything up onto a USB drive, organizing the files by date and project. As I worked, I came across something that made me pause. Brent_forecast_Q2_manipulated.xlsx, I opened it. Inside were two versions of the same quarterly forecast. One showed realistic projections based on actual data. The other showed inflated numbers that made his department look more successful than it really was. Guess which version went to the board? I saved both files, along with the metadata showing when they'd been created and modified. By midnight, I had enough evidence to end Brent's career. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. First, I had my own career to rebuild. Wednesday was my day to reinvent myself. I started with LinkedIn, updating my profile to reflect my new status as an independent consultant. I kept the language professional but confident. No bitter posts about unfair treatment. No dramatic announcements. Just a simple update, excited to announce the launch of Pierce & Company. Strategic Solutions. Now accepting select clients for strategic consulting and business development. Within an hour, I had 12 connection requests and 4 direct messages. Then I went shopping. I know it sounds shallow, but sometimes you need to look the part before you can play it. I bought a navy blue blazer that made me feel like I could conquer the world, along with a leather portfolio that screamed serious professional. The strangest part of the day was how good I felt. For months at my old job, I'd been walking on eggshells, trying to avoid Brent's manipulation. Now, for the first time in forever, I felt like myself again. Around 3 p.m., my LinkedIn notifications lit up. A message from a recruiter caught my attention. Hi Leighton, I represent Stratcor Solutions. We've heard great things about your work and would love to discuss some opportunities. Are you open to a conversation? I stared at the message for a moment, then laughed out loud. Stratcore. Brent's biggest nightmare. This was getting interesting. Absolutely. When works best for you? The recruiter's response came within minutes. Stratcore wasn't just interested, they were urgent. Could we do a call tomorrow morning? We're expanding our strategic consulting division and need someone with your exact background. The timing was perfect, just before my meeting with Hallgate. Thursday morning's call exceeded every expectation. The recruiter, Patricia, was sharp and direct. She'd clearly done her homework. We've been tracking the Hallgate account situation, she said. Alex Hallgate specifically mentioned you as someone we should consider bringing on board. Wait. Hallgate had already talked to them about me? We'd like to bring you in for a presentation on Friday. Would you be available around 2 p.m.? Friday at 2 p.m. Exactly 1 week after Brent fired me. I'd be delighted, I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. Perfect. Bring a strategy deck if you have one. Something that shows your approach to complex client relationships. I did have a strategy deck. The one I'd created for the Hallgate expansion, the same deck Brent had rejected last month, calling it too aggressive and unrealistic. Maybe it was time to prove him wrong. After the call, I started preparing 2 presentations. One was my actual pitch for Stratcore, polished and professional. The other was bait. I had a feeling Brent was still watching my every move. The Stratcore team was everything Brent's company wasn't. Professional, focused, and actually interested in results rather than office politics. The preliminary video call went perfectly. I presented my approach to strategic consulting, walking them through case studies and methodology. They asked smart questions and seemed genuinely impressed with my forecasting accuracy. Your track record speaks for itself, said the lead consultant. Especially your ability to predict market shifts that other firms missed completely. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was celebrating. These were the exact same insights Brent had dismissed as overthinking. We'd like to move forward with an in-person presentation on Friday at 2 p.m. Our CEO will be attending personally. My heart skipped. The CEO? This was bigger than I'd thought. After the call, I checked my email and found exactly what I'd been expecting. Morgan, my former colleague and one of the few people I still trusted at the old company, had sent me a message. Girl, something weird is happening. Brent downloaded your old Hallgate deck from the shared drive this morning. He's been in his office all day, preparing something big for Friday. Perfect. I'd uploaded the bait deck to the shared drive the night before, making sure it looked legitimate but contained subtle flaws that would only be obvious to someone who really understood the Hallgate account. If Brent was planning to steal my work again, he was in for a surprise. I typed back to Morgan, thanks for the heads up. Things are about to get very interesting. Thursday night felt like Christmas Eve. I had 2 presentations ready, and I'd set the perfect trap. The real deck for Stratcore was flawless. I'd spent hours refining every slide, double-checking every statistic, and crafting a narrative that would blow them away. The fake deck I'd left for Brent was different. It looked impressive on the surface, but anyone who actually understood Hallgate's business would spot the problems immediately. Wrong market segments, outdated competitor analysis, and financial projections that made no sense. But it was formatted exactly like my usual work, complete with my old branding and style. If Brent presented it, everyone would know where it came from. Around 10 p.m., Morgan texted again, update, Brent's been bragging about his breakthrough strategy for tomorrow's board review. Says it's going to be his biggest win yet. His board review. Of course. I did a quick search and confirmed what I suspected. Brent's company had their quarterly board review every Friday at 2 p.m. The same time as my Stratcore presentation. I wrote a small note on a sticky pad, see you at 2 p.m. Then I did something that felt wonderfully dramatic. I placed the note on top of the USB drive containing all the evidence I'd gathered about Brent's misconduct. Tomorrow was going to be perfect. What I didn't expect was finding out who would be in the Stratcor meeting room. Friday morning arrived with a text from Morgan that made my coffee taste even better. Emergency update. Brent is literally copying your slide layouts word for word. He's not even trying to hide it. Some of these slides still have your initials in the corner. I couldn't help but laugh. His arrogance was about to be his downfall. But then Morgan sent another message that stopped me cold. Also, weird coincidence, his dad is flying in for the board meeting today. Apparently he's one of the biggest investors and wants to see this game-changing presentation in person. Brent's father was going to watch him steal my work and take credit for it. I spent the morning doing final preparations, staying calm and focused. No revenge posts on social media. No angry emails. Just quiet, professional progress. At 1 p.m., I got a text from Stratcor's CEO, looking forward to this afternoon. By the way, we've invited an additional observer to your presentation. Hope that's not a problem. An observer? That seemed unusual, but I wasn't worried. My presentation could handle any audience. I arrived at Stratcor's offices at 1:55 p.m., walking through their sleek lobby with my head high. The receptionist directed me to the executive conference room on the 20th floor. As the elevator doors opened, I stepped out with confidence, my heels clicking on the marble floor. I entered the conference room and immediately understood why they'd mentioned an observer. Sitting at the far end of the table, looking uncomfortable in an expensive suit, was a man I recognized from company newsletters and Brent's social media posts. Brent's father. The same man who was, at that very moment, probably watching his son present stolen work to their board. The irony was perfect. Here was Brent's father, about to watch me deliver the real version of the presentation his son was probably botching across town. But I couldn't let personal satisfaction distract me from the task at hand. This was my shot at a new career, and I was going to nail it. The Stratcor team was professional and welcoming. CEO Leighton Pierce, no relation, despite the name, led the introductions. The senior strategy team was there, along with 2 VPs and Brent's father, who introduced himself simply as Jackson, an interested investor. I started my presentation exactly at 2 p.m. Good afternoon. I'm here to share a strategic approach that I believe can transform how you serve clients like Holgate Industries. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through my vision. Real market analysis. Genuine innovation. Strategies that actually made sense. The difference between this and Brent's usual style was like night and day. Where he relied on buzzwords and manipulation, I offered substance and clarity. The room was engaged from the first slide. They asked thoughtful questions. They leaned forward when I explained my forecasting methodology. But the best part came when I reached my competitive analysis section. Now, let's talk about your primary competitor, I said, pulling up a slide about Brent's company. Based on my insider knowledge of their operations, I can tell you exactly where they're vulnerable. Jackson, Brent's father, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I didn't trash talk them. I didn't need to. I just presented facts about market positioning, client satisfaction trends, and strategic blind spots. Facts that painted a picture of a company living on reputation rather than results. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then CEO Pierce stood up. Ms. Pierce, that was exceptional. We'd like to make you an offer. We're prepared to offer you the position of VP of Strategic Development, effective immediately. The words hung in the air like a perfectly thrown punch. VP. The same level position Brent had been lobbying for at his own company for over a year. I kept my expression neutral, professional. I'm very interested. Could you tell me more about the scope and responsibilities? Full autonomy over strategic consulting. Your own team. And CEO Pierce glanced at Jackson before continuing. Oversight of several accounts we're targeting, including some currently held by your former employer. Including Hallgate. Including accounts where I already had relationships. There is one clause we'd like to discuss, added the head of legal. Given your recent departure from a competitor, we want to ensure all intellectual property considerations are clear. I nodded. Absolutely. I've brought my own work only, and I'm prepared to sign any reasonable non-compete agreements. What I didn't mention was that most of my best ideas had never been implemented at my old company anyway. Brent had rejected them. Jackson finally spoke up. Ms. Pierce, if I may ask, what makes you confident you can deliver results that your previous company couldn't? It was a fair question. And I had the perfect answer. Because I've spent the last 6 months watching bad strategy decisions destroy good client relationships. I know exactly what doesn't work. And what does work? Honesty. Competence. And putting client success ahead of office politics. The room exchanged glances. Jackson nodded slowly. When could you start? Asked CEO Pierce. Monday morning. They offered me a compensation package that was 30% higher than my old salary. I accepted on the spot. As we shook hands, my phone buzzed with a text from Morgan. Board meeting just ended. Brent looks like he's seen a ghost. The details came in pieces over the next hour. Morgan, bless her heart, was feeding me updates like a war correspondent. Brent's presentation was a disaster. The board kept asking questions he couldn't answer. His data made no sense. Then, wait, it gets worse. Someone in the room pointed out that the slide formatting looked familiar. They recognized your design style. And finally, oh my God. His dad just asked him to explain the Hallgate projections. Brent is scrambling. I was still in Stratcor's office, finalizing paperwork, when the most beautiful text arrived. Emergency board session called. Brent has been asked to step outside while they discuss his presentation. His dad looks furious. The timing was perfect. While Brent was melting down in his stolen presentation, I was signing contracts for his dream job at his biggest competitor. But the sweetest part was yet to come. CEO Pierce pulled me aside as I was getting ready to leave. Ms. Pierce, there's something I should mention. We've been watching your former company's performance for months. Today's events have been illuminating. How so? Let's just say we're reconsidering several business relationships. Your insights about their vulnerabilities were very accurate. Before I left, they handed me a company laptop and access cards. See you Monday, VP Pierce. VP Pierce. I liked the sound of that. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't resist checking LinkedIn. Already, 3 different people had congratulated me on my new position. The news was spreading fast. But Brent's day was just getting started. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation and barely contained excitement. I spent Saturday setting up my home office and Sunday planning my first week as VP. Monday morning came with another gift from Morgan. Girl, you need to hear this. Brent got demoted. They removed him from VP track and he's back to senior manager. His dad apparently had a very long conversation with the board. But the real surprise came when I walked into Stratcor's offices for my first day. Waiting on my desk was a welcome package from CEO Pierce, along with a handwritten note. Looking forward to seeing what you accomplish here. By the way, Hallgate Industries officially signed with us this morning. Alex asked specifically to work with you. Hallgate had left Brent's company for mine. I spent my first morning in meetings with my new team, 3 sharp analysts who were excited to have leadership that actually understood strategy. No more politics. No more manipulation. Just results. Around 11 a.m., my assistant knocked on my door. "Ms. Pierce? There's someone here to see you. Says he's from your former company." I looked up to see a familiar face. Charlie, the building janitor who'd always been kind to me during those late nights when I was the only one left in the office. "Charlie. What brings you here?" He smiled, holding a small envelope. "Wanted to congratulate you in person. Heard about your new position." "How did you hear about it?" "Word travels fast in our building. Especially when someone deserves it as much as you do." He handed me the envelope. Inside was a simple card with a message that made my day. "Always knew you were 3 steps ahead of everyone else. This time you were 5. Charlie." We talked for a few minutes about the old office, carefully avoiding mention of Brent. But as Charlie was leaving, he paused at the door. "Oh, and Ms. Pierce? That young man who caused you trouble? Let's just say karma has a way of working things out." By Tuesday, the industry gossip network was in full swing. My LinkedIn was exploding with congratulations, connection requests, and not-so-subtle inquiries about whether I was hiring. But the most satisfying message came from an unexpected source. "Leighton, this is Patricia Hallgate from Hallgate Industries. Alex told me about your move to Stratcor. We wanted to personally thank you for everything you've done for our company. Your strategic guidance has been invaluable." She continued. "We're also excited to announce that we're expanding our contract with Stratcor by 40%. We believe this partnership, with your leadership, will drive exceptional results." A 40% expansion. That was worth millions. I forwarded the message to CEO Pierce with a simple note: "ROI on my hiring package achieved in week 1. His response was immediate: "Impressive. Board is very pleased. We should discuss your ideas for additional team expansion." But the real entertainment came from Morgan's updates about life at my old company. "Brent is spiraling. He's been in emergency meetings all week. Apparently losing Hallgate was just the beginning. 2 other major clients are reassessing their strategic partnerships." Translation: they were following Hallgate to Stratcor. Also, Morgan added, HR is asking a lot of questions about team management practices. Someone apparently submitted a complaint about workplace harassment. I wondered if the video evidence I'd collected was finding its way to the right people. Wednesday brought the news I'd been waiting for: board meeting scheduled for Friday. Topic: Department restructuring and leadership evaluation. Brent's day of reckoning was coming. And I had a front row seat to watch it all unfold. What happened next was so perfect I almost couldn't believe it. Thursday morning, I got a call from a journalist at Industry Weekly, one of the most respected business publications in our sector. "Ms. Pierce, we're working on a story about strategic consulting trends. Your name keeps coming up as someone who's disrupting traditional approaches. Would you be willing to speak with us?" It turned out that several of my former clients had been talking to reporters about their positive experiences working with me. The story was going to focus on how smaller, more agile consulting firms were outperforming established companies. The interview went incredibly well. I stayed professional but didn't shy away from discussing the importance of ethical leadership and client-focused strategies. When the reporter asked about my rapid transition to Stratcor, I kept it simple. Sometimes the best opportunities come from unexpected changes. The key is being prepared to recognize them. The article was scheduled to publish Monday morning. Meanwhile, Morgan's reports from my old company were getting more dramatic by the day. Emergency all-hands meeting tomorrow. Rumor is they're announcing major changes to the leadership structure. Also, Brent's been seen cleaning out his office. His assistant says he's exploring other opportunities. Friday morning arrived with one final text from Morgan: board meeting starts at 2 p.m. We'll update you as soon as I know anything. 2 p.m. on Friday. Exactly 2 weeks after Brent fired me. I spent the morning in my new office, working on expansion plans for the strategic consulting division. Around 1:30 p.m., I took a break and opened my desk drawer. Inside was the USB drive with all the evidence I'd gathered about Brent's misconduct. Next to it was the sticky note I'd written 2 weeks ago, "See you at 2 p.m. I'd never needed to use the evidence. The truth had a way of coming out on its own. But I kept both items as reminders of how far I'd come. At exactly 2:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Morgan that made my whole week. It's official. Brent has been terminated for performance issues and violations of company policy. Effective immediately. I set down my coffee and read the message again. Terminated. The same word he'd used on me 2 weeks ago. But Morgan wasn't done. Get this, they're also launching an investigation into client account management practices. Several former team members have come forward with concerns about data manipulation and credit stealing. The house of cards was finally falling down. Over the next hour, the updates kept coming, Brent's being escorted out by security. His father left the building without speaking to anyone. CEO just announced they're hiring external consultants to review all client accounts from the past year. That afternoon, I got a call from Alex Hallgate. "Leighton, I heard the news about your former company. Just wanted you to know that working with you and Stratcor has been the best business decision we've made all year." "I appreciate that, Alex. We're just getting started. Actually, I have 3 other companies in my network who've been asking about strategic consulting. Would you be interested in expanding your client base?" By the end of the week, I had 5 new client meetings scheduled and approval to hire 2 additional team members. Sunday evening, I was working late in my home office when I got an unexpected email. The sender was listed as a former colleague, with no other identifying information. The subject line read, "Thank you." The message was short: "You gave us all hope that doing the right thing eventually pays off. Some of us are finally finding the courage to speak up. Thank you for showing us what real leadership looks like." I never found out who sent it, but I printed it out and put it on my office wall. 3 weeks after starting at Stratcor, I was invited to speak at the Regional Business Leadership Conference. The topic, Strategic Career Transitions, Turning Setbacks into Comebacks. The irony wasn't lost on me. A month ago, I was getting fired in a conference room. Now I was being asked to share my expertise with industry leaders. I spent several days crafting my presentation, focusing on 3 key themes: resilience, strategic thinking, and ethical leadership. I used my own story as a case study, carefully avoiding any personal attacks while highlighting the lessons learned. The day of the conference, I was surprised to see several familiar faces in the audience. Former clients, competitors, and even a few people from my old company, including Morgan, who'd somehow managed to get the day off. But the face that surprised me most was in the 3rd row. Brent's former assistant, Kelly, who I'd heard had been promoted to fill some of his responsibilities after his departure. I delivered my presentation with confidence, sharing insights about strategic planning, client relationship management, and the importance of building trust through consistent results. During the Q&A session, hands went up all around the room. Questions about market analysis, team leadership, and industry trends. I answered each one thoughtfully, drawing on real experience rather than theoretical knowledge. Then Kelly raised her hand. "Ms. Pierce, what advice would you give to someone who's just been unfairly treated at work? How do you know when to fight back and when to move forward?" The room went quiet. This wasn't really a question about business strategy. I paused, looking directly at her. The best revenge is massive success. Focus your energy on building something better rather than tearing down what hurt you. And remember, the truth has a way of coming out eventually. The audience erupted in applause. Several people stood up. After my presentation, Kelly approached me privately. "Thank you," she said simply. That was exactly what I needed to hear. A month later, Industry Weekly published their feature story. The headline read, "The New Face of Strategic Consulting. How Agile Firms Are Disrupting Traditional Business Models." I was prominently featured as an example of the trend toward more personalized, results-driven consulting. The article highlighted my rapid success at Stratcor and included quotes from several satisfied clients. But the most satisfying part was a small sidebar that discussed the importance of ethical leadership in maintaining client trust. Without naming names, it referenced recent cases where established firms had lost major accounts due to leadership and management issues. The article went viral in our industry. My LinkedIn notifications were constant for 3 days straight. More importantly, it led to speaking opportunities, new client inquiries, and recognition from industry leaders who'd never heard of me before. CEO Pierce called me into his office the day after the article published. "Congratulations on the coverage. The board is very impressed with your impact in such a short time." "Thank you. I'm just getting started. That's what I wanted to discuss. We're considering expanding the strategic consulting division into a separate subsidiary. Would you be interested in leading that initiative?" Leading a subsidiary. Essentially, running my own company under the Stratcor umbrella. "Tell me more," I said, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. 2 hours later, I walked out of his office with a promotion to Senior VP and preliminary approval to build my own team of 20 consultants. That evening, I treated myself to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town. As I sat there reflecting on how much had changed in just 6 weeks, my phone buzzed with a text from Charlie. "Saw the article. So proud of you. By the way, heard your old building is hiring a new facilities manager. Apparently the previous management had some personnel issues. Karma keeps working." "Charlie," I raised my glass of wine in a silent toast. To second chances, strategic patience, and the beautiful justice of letting success speak louder than words. 2 months after the Industry Weekly article, I got an invitation that felt like the ultimate validation. The International Business Strategy Summit wanted me to deliver the keynote address on innovative leadership in a changing market. This wasn't just any conference. This was the event where industry titans came to share big ideas and shape the future of business consulting. The keynote slot meant I'd be speaking to over 2,000 professionals, including CEOs, VPs, and thought leaders from companies around the world. I spent weeks preparing, crafting a presentation that would blend personal experience with actionable insights. The theme I settled on was strategic silence, the power of letting your work speak first. The day of the conference, I stood backstage feeling more confident than I'd ever felt in my professional life. My new team at Stratcor had grown to 15 people. We'd landed 12 major new clients. The subsidiary was officially launching next month. As I walked out to the podium, I scanned the audience and saw faces I recognized from industry magazines, LinkedIn profiles, and conference circuits. But near the back, I spotted someone unexpected. Morgan was there, along with 3 other former colleagues from my old company. They'd driven 4 hours to hear me speak. I opened with a story. 18 months ago, I was fired from my job at 2 p.m. on a Monday afternoon. I thought my career was over. Today, I'm here to tell you why that was the best thing that ever happened to me. For the next 40 minutes, I shared lessons about resilience, strategic thinking, and the power of ethical leadership. I talked about the importance of building genuine client relationships and the long-term value of doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. I didn't mention Brent by name. I didn't need to. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, the networking reception was a blur of handshakes, business cards, and opportunity discussions. But the moment that mattered most came when Morgan approached me with tears in her eyes. "You gave us all courage," she said. "Half the team has left for better opportunities since you showed us what was possible." 6 months later, I was sitting in my corner office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, when my assistant buzzed in. "Miss Pierce, there's a call for you." Someone from Harvard Business School. Harvard wanted to interview me for a case study they were developing about career transitions and strategic thinking in modern business environments. The professor explained that my story had become legendary in certain business circles. The rapid transition from termination to industry leadership, the client relationships that followed me to a new company, the subsidiary launch that was already being copied by competitors. "We'd like to include your case in our executive MBA curriculum," she said. "Would you be willing to participate?" Of course I would. But the conversation that really mattered came later that week. I was having lunch with Charlie, something I'd made a point to do once a month since starting at Stratcor. He'd become more than a former colleague, he was a genuine friend and mentor. "You know what I'm proudest of," he said over sandwiches. "You never became bitter. You just became better." It wasn't always easy, I admitted. There were moments when I wanted to lash out, to expose everything I knew about what really happened. But you didn't. You stayed focused on building your own success instead of tearing down someone else's failure. He was right. The temptation for revenge had been strong, especially in those first few weeks. But I'd chosen a different path. And it had led me here, running my own division, speaking at major conferences, mentoring young professionals, and building something meaningful. That evening, I updated my LinkedIn status for the first time in months. Grateful to announce that Pierce Strategic Consulting has officially launched as an independent subsidiary of Stratcor Solutions. Thank you to everyone who believed in this vision from the beginning. The post got over 500 likes and 100 comments within the first hour. But the comment that meant the most came from an unexpected source. Kelly, Brent's former assistant, had written, "Thank you for showing all of us that integrity and competence always win in the end." A year after that Monday at 2 p.m., I marked the anniversary in the most fitting way possible. I was back in a conference room, but this time I was the one conducting the meeting. "Thank you all for coming," I said to the 15 members of my consulting team. "I want to share some exciting news about our first-year numbers." The results spoke for themselves: 23 major clients, 95% client retention rate, and revenue that exceeded projections by 40%. But more importantly, we'd built something special. A company culture based on competence, integrity, and genuine care for client success. After the team meeting, I found myself alone in my office, looking at the framed article from Industry Weekly that hung on my wall next to the thank you note from the anonymous colleague. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the announcement about your 1-year anniversary. Incredible what you've accomplished. Just wanted you to know that watching your success helped me find the courage to leave my own toxic situation. You inspire more people than you know." I'd gotten dozens of similar messages over the past year. People who'd found hope in my story, who'd used it as motivation to make their own positive changes. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I Googled Brent's name. He'd bounced around to 3 different companies in the past year, never staying anywhere longer than 4 months. His LinkedIn profile was updated frequently but vaguely, with lots of buzzwords but no concrete achievements. I felt no satisfaction in his struggles. Just a quiet recognition that the universe has a way of balancing things out. People who build careers on manipulation and credit stealing eventually run out of other people's work to claim. Meanwhile, people who focus on genuine value creation tend to find sustainable success. I closed the browser and opened my calendar for the next day. Tomorrow, I had 3 client presentations, 2 team meetings, and a call with Harvard about expanding the case study into a full business school course. But for tonight, I was going to celebrate how far I'd come in exactly 365 days. From fired to hired to inspired. 18 months later, I received an invitation that completed the circle. The Women in Leadership Association wanted me to deliver the closing keynote at their annual summit. The topic they requested: turning professional setbacks into strategic advantages. As I prepared for the speech, I realized how much my perspective had evolved. The pain of that Monday firing had transformed into gratitude for the opportunity it created. I stood on that stage looking out at 800 professional women, many of whom were fighting their own battles with workplace politics, unfair treatment, and imposter syndrome. How many of you have been in a situation where you were blamed for someone else's failure? I asked. Nearly half the hands in the audience went up. How many of you have had your ideas stolen or your contributions minimized? Even more hands. And how many of you have wondered if standing up for yourself is worth the risk? Almost every hand in the room. I spent the next hour sharing not just my story, but the stories of the dozens of people who'd reached out to me over the past year. Tales of courage, resilience, and strategic career moves that had led to better opportunities. During the Q&A, a young woman in the front row raised her hand. "Ms. Pierce, I was just fired yesterday for supposedly not being a team player. I know it's because I questioned my boss's decision to take credit for my project. I'm scared about what comes next." The room went silent. I could see myself in her face, the confusion, the hurt, the uncertainty about the future. "First," I said, "document everything. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Understanding what really happened will help you explain it professionally in future interviews. Second, focus on what you can control. Your skills, your network, your reputation. These are the things that will carry you forward. And third, remember that the people who succeed by taking credit for others' work eventually run out of other people's ideas. But your creativity, your competence, your integrity, those are renewable resources." The applause was thunderous. After the event, that young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for giving me hope that this might actually lead to something better." I handed her my business card. "It will. Trust the process." 2 years after the firing, I was featured on the cover of Executive Leadership magazine. The headline read, "Pierce Strategic: How One Woman Built an Industry-Leading Consulting Firm from a Single Termination." The article detailed the growth of my subsidiary, now employing 45 consultants and serving clients across 3 continents. But more than the numbers, it focused on the culture we'd built, one where competence mattered more than politics, where credit was given where due, and where success was measured by client results rather than internal manipulation. The magazine interview included a question I'd been asked many times: "Do you ever regret not taking legal action against your former employer?" "Never," I answered honestly. Legal action would have kept me focused on the past. I chose to focus on building the future. But the question that made me pause was this one: what would you say to Brent if you saw him today? I thought about it for a long moment before answering. I'd say thank you. His actions forced me to become stronger, more resourceful, and more confident in my own abilities. Without that catalyst, I might never have realized what I was capable of achieving. The week the magazine hit newsstands, I got an unexpected email. It was from a recruiting firm, reaching out on behalf of a senior executive who was interested in discussing a potential partnership opportunity. I almost deleted it. I got dozens of these emails every week. But something made me read to the end. The potential partner was Jackson, Brent's father. The email explained that he'd followed my career trajectory since that day at Stratcor. He was now looking to invest in independent consulting firms and wanted to explore whether Pierce Strategic might be interested in expansion capital. I stared at the email for a full 5 minutes. Then I forwarded it to my head of business development with a note: "Let's set up a call. This should be interesting." Sometimes the universe has the most unexpected sense of humor. Today is Friday, exactly 2 years since Brent fired me at 2 p.m. on that Monday afternoon. I'm sitting in my executive suite, looking out at the city skyline from the 35th floor of our new headquarters building. The nameplate on my desk reads, Leighton Pierce, CEO, Pierce Strategic Consulting became fully independent 6 months ago, with Jackson as our lead investor. The irony is beautiful. Brent's father now helps fund the company that his son inadvertently created by firing me. At 1:55 p.m., my assistant buzzes in. "Miss Pierce, you have a visitor." Says it's personal. I look up to see Charlie walking through my door, carrying a small wrapped package. "2-year anniversary," he says with a grin. "Thought you might want to mark the occasion." I open the package to find a custom-made sticky note pad. Each note has the same message printed at the bottom. "See you at 2 p.m., L. Pierce, CEO." We both laugh. "You know what the best part is?" Charlie asks. "You didn't just prove him wrong. You proved that integrity and competence always win in the long run." He's right. In the past 2 years, Pierce Strategic has grown from 0 to 60 employees. We've won industry awards for client satisfaction and ethical business practices. We've been featured in major publications, and business schools use our story as a case study for strategic career development. But the real victory isn't in the numbers. It's in the culture we've built. It's in the young professionals we've mentored. It's in the dozens of people who've told me that our story gave them courage to stand up for themselves and pursue better opportunities. It's in proving that you don't have to choose between being successful and being decent. As Charlie leaves, I open my desk drawer and pull out 2 items I've kept as reminders of this journey. The first is the USB drive containing evidence I never needed to use because the truth came out on its own. The second is a new sticky note I wrote this morning. He fired me on Monday at 2 p.m. By Friday at 2 p.m., I handed him my resignation letter. From the top. At exactly 2 p.m., I placed both items in our company time capsule, a tradition we started to remember that every ending is really a beginning. The best revenge truly is massive success. And sometimes, the people who try to destroy your career end up giving you exactly what you need to build something extraordinary. If this story inspired you to think about your own career challenges or reminded you of a time when you turned a setback into a comeback, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey from termination to triumph, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about resilience, strategic thinking, and the power of professional integrity. Because sometimes the most powerful response to workplace injustice isn't revenge, it's building something so successful that your success becomes the best possible proof of your worth.